Are y'all ready to head off the trails? I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and I'm ready to take you on a mysterious journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. We would love to have you. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. You can find me, the Cryptid Huntress, at thecryptidhuntress.com, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress. Visit my shop, War Woman Goods. You can find that on Etsy. And shout out to Bumblefoot for that really awesome intro music. We really appreciate that. All right, we have an amazing guest for you guys tonight on SOR. I have filmmaker, producer, and researcher Frank Jacob here tonight. But don't forget that right after my show, After Hours has a great program set up for you guys. So let's get to our guest. Frank Jacob is an international award-winning filmmaker, presenter, visual artist, musician, and composer. His recent films explore the frontiers of consciousness-raising subjects in the films Solar Revolution, the Klaus Dona Chronicles, and Packing for Mars. In March of this year, Frank broke a story about a mysterious group called the Guardians of the Looking Glass, who claim to be a breakaway faction of the controversial Project Looking Glass, having resurfaced to help humanity avert upcoming disasters. This time, technology makes it possible to peer into timelines, this time technology, makes it possible to peer into timelines, future probabilities, and more, and appears to be used by rogue elements in government, as well as the elite, to bring about a technocratic dictatorship. And that is not cool at all. All right. He followed up with A Tale of Two Timelines, a webinar that dives deep into the history connecting consciousness, ETs, CERN, AI, time travel, interdimensional messages, the meaning of timelines, and an upcoming cosmic event with the power to propel mankind into a quantum evolutionary leap predicted by the indigenous people around the world. As a presenter, Frank's multimedia presentations take his audiences deep down the rabbit hole, and that's what we like here on Off the Trails, into hidden history, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, secret technology, human evolution, timelines, and parallel worlds. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to Spaced Out Radio, Mr. Frank Jacob and Parallel Worlds. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to Spaced Out Radio.
Hi, I'm getting a massive echo.
Yes, it sounds like there is an echo of some sort.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm getting a massive echo.
Yes. Is that on your is that on your end?
Yeah, I'm hearing it like one of those
maybe
multiple things where it goes off and off and off into the distance. And
that is really interesting. Well,
this is funny because this happened before at another show I was on. I think it's a browser glitch or something.
It may be. It may be. Well, is there any way to turn the volume down or to put? Do you have a earbud in by any chance?
It doesn't matter because then it just happens in the headphones.
Oh, it does. Well, interesting. Okay. Well, it's still going on. Okay. Well, do you want to hop off and log back in? Do you think that would
maybe
help?
That's what we need to do? I'll pop off and log back in, right?
Yes, just log back in and I'll be waiting for you. Okay. Thank you, Frank.
See you in a minute.
Yeah, we'll be back. Hey, listen, everybody, thank y'all so much for being here tonight. We're going to have an amazing show. Frank is one of my favorite people to watch on YouTube right now. He's an amazing filmmaker, by the way. He talks about CERN, and let me tell y'all, it's very timely, okay, that Frank is joining me tonight because CERN is about to be reactivated. I believe it's on Tuesday, okay? And so what does that mean for humanity, okay? This is actually going to, it's going to be ramped up to the highest energy level, like the highest rate that it goes. And this would have really crazy implications for all of humanity right now. So, it has something to do with the Mandela effect, if you guys are familiar with that. But just timeline shifts and time slips and time jumps and all that stuff. In my audience, you guys are probably wondering, like, what does this have to do? My show is usually about cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman, ETs. Well, it has everything to do with that. And let me tell you guys, I am a remote viewer. And when I'm remote viewing, a lot of times I have all these timeline shifts and time jumps. and even CERN comes up in my remote viewing data. Okay. So we have Frank back, and I'm going to pull him up so we can continue our conversation.
Hey there.
Hey, is that better?
Okay. Everything's cool now.
No more echo. Man,
No
I
more
tell you,
echo.
they must have turned CERN on early. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Frank, thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure to have you on Space Out Radio. I know you got up probably at 3:00 in the morning to be with us because you're on the other side of the world. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, it is nighttime here, and I have fireworks exploding all around my house right now for Independence Day. Okay. And I guess people got the party started early. And so, well, that can be kind of a segue into talking about CERN a little bit. I was telling the audience, that it was timely to have you on because CERN is about to reactivate in a couple of days. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you know a little something about CERN, right?
A little, yeah. Well, the 3rd and the 4th of July have been announced as being Big Bang Day at CERN. It has to do with the fact that CERN for the last couple of years they've been refurbishing and upgrading the facilities to be able to generate an even more massive energy field, and they've more than doubled their capacity. Years ago, they were operating on between 5 and 6 tera electron volts. That's 5 to 6 trillion electron volts for those viewers who don't know what tera electron volts are. And right now, they're up to between 14 and 16 tera electron volts. So they are generating fields of energy on the planet that have never, ever been generated, or at least in our modern history. Maybe they did in Atlantis or something.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody really knows, what's going to happen. I think, they've got all these physicists there. I think over 7,000 of them working there. And on the 5th of July, they are going to officially start. Now, there's even an ad, if you want, I can show you if you're interested. I'll show you a quick. This is their announcement here. They're calling it, the Higgs Day, right? The big boson. Higgs bosons is what they generate there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for people to get an idea of the size of this thing, I'm just going to show you one more picture because I think people don't really understand. They hear about CERN and they think about a facility and technical stuff, yeah. But that yellow circle there, that represents the actual physical size of the collider that they're operating in.
Oh, wow.
So if you can imagine, if you can imagine the looking glass, which is we're going to talking about as well, which is this device that has, that can fit inside of a room, and they generate, fields that create, they can actually see timelines, and they open portals in a way. So if you think about a portal, and you wonder what does a portal look like? Well, this stuff inside the yellow circle you see right here, that is the new portal that they are going to be opening. That is the size of the portal that they're going to be opening at CERN.
Okay. Well, what are they expecting is going to come out of that portal, or what is going into the portal?
Well, we have it from insiders that they're going to be generating new dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
That's their goal. And, they because it all ties into the parallel universe, concept, the idea that there's multiple parallel universes that we exist in. And so, when they open this up, it's like well, they're trying to emulate the Big Bang, as the name calls, as it's called, Big Bang Day. So they're trying to generate sort of black holes, vortexes. And those fields and those vortexes, of course, when something goes in, something else has to come out.
Yeah.
So there's lots of theories about it. They never come clean with it to the public. It could be dark matter. It could be black goo. It could be, we don't know, and I think, they don't really disclose that information to the public. They have their theories, their public version of it. But what they generate with those massive amounts of electronic fields is Higgs bosons. Those magnetic fields are the conditions required for these Higgs boson particles to manifest, to appear. And the Higgs bosons are like, if you think of them as undefined potential molecules, potential particles that make up matter, then Higgs bosons are like the precursor to matter, which means they're sort of manifestation molecules. So it could be positive too. It can work for us, if we're trying to manifest a positive future and a positive timeline, like we've been talking about with the looking glass situation. Then it can, it doesn't have to be all negative and dark, even though it does look a little bit dubious. And we also know that the magnetic fields are used to stabilize the field, the portal that they're opening, in case things get out of control, that they can shut it down. Because if they can't shut it down, it could swallow in the entire. Well, I don't want to go there. But who knows?
I was wondering that
it could swallow in the entire planet. So I know. If it's really bad, then I guess today's our last day.
Well, it's been fun. It's been fun knowing everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's actually quite terrifying. But I always try to stay positive and see the good side of everything. And this is very it's pretty doom and gloom, okay, Frank. And when you start thinking about this, because I can't say for certain, but I've heard rumors that there are other colliders around the world, and I'm not sure if you've heard that before.
I know that there are at least 12.
Yes, there may or may not be one around near where I live, and I don't know for sure. Okay, but I did hear rumors. Let's just put it this way: that when it was turned on, violence went up in the city, and robberies and murders, homicides. Something came out of it. These are just rumors, okay, and so I can't say for sure. But I did hear, and so
it has to do with the Schumann frequencies, and I'm not surprised to hear that. And one of the things that happens with whenever they fire up one of their experiments is they activate their beam, and the beam creates a if you think of it as in terms of like lightning, right? They're trying to generate lightning, just as an analogy, and they generate these massive lightnings, and then they have their experiment. But what happens when we have lightning? Well, we also get thunder. So, you can think of the thunder as what's connecting and colliding with the Schumann frequencies. And the Schumann frequencies are these belts of these magnetic belts around the planet that are our protection on the one hand to the cosmic radiation and the particles and everything out there that we're flying through. And on the other hand, they are, because we've basically been tuned to being on the earth as human beings. We're kind of we're collectively part of the earth, and all of our brain function, one of the primary frequencies of our brain is 8 hertz, and that's also the same as the primary frequency of the Schumann. The Schumann frequency also has other subharmonics like 12, 14 hertz. And our brain does as well. Like when we're in awakened states of consciousness, we're operating on higher hertz frequencies. And when we go into alpha states and deep meditation, we go down into those frequency states of 8 hertz and so on, alpha states, and those are the states that give us connectivity and quietude, so that, and when we're sleeping, for example, we're in those states. And those states also connect us to other dimensions, you might say. Other, they open us up to resonating with whatever else is resonating on that frequency. And since the Schumann frequencies are the primary frequencies 8 hertz, it's almost like a data exchange, like where we go back into resonance with the whole planet. And so a lot of people, there's a guy called Burkhard Heim, a German physicist, he's no longer alive, but he developed a 12-dimensional theory, mathematical theory for the universe, which is incredible, and it's never really been fully understood, but people are still kind of mining it, because it's probably one of the best mathematical models that we have in terms of dimensionality, and how he broke down all dimensions, including spirit, and it even includes God and spirituality levels. And he calls it the G4 level. That is that level where we connect with those higher, like the programming data, if you will. It's like we connect with the cloud, and we connect through the cloud, to the cloud with that 8 hertz frequency, if you might think of it that way. So that's and when you go into resonance with something, like, if you have 2 tuning forks and you bang one, and they're both tuned to the same frequency, then the other one will start to resonate as well. And so
Yes.
what they're doing when they connect with Hertz, with CERN, I'll show you another picture here. This is, at the bottom left here, you see this red arrow. That is when they activated the beam. And on the right-hand side, you see the Schumann frequencies as they're read out at the Tomsk measuring station in Russia. And every time they fire this thing up, you can see it here again. It goes all white like that.
Oh, the whiteout.
Right. And when people see that, I've seen a lot of this on the internet. They say, "Oh, look, the frequencies are going up. They're going higher. The Schumann resonances are going higher. That means we're going up into the fifth dimension. We're going to transcend now." Unfortunately, that's not how it works, because the Schumann frequencies do not go up and down like that. Because if they did, then either the speed of light would have to change instantaneously, the size of the Earth would have to radically change to half its size, and all these things, which aren't happening, of course. What you're seeing with those white areas is is the instruments being able to overload it. They're not able to. They're not able to pick up that signal anymore. All they do is it's like when you have a microphone and you set your microphone level to a certain point. Like say you're recording a song and you just want to do a whisper, so you crank up the volume on the microphone and on the like, where you're on the circuit board. And then if all of a sudden you come up to the microphone and you scream into it, what happens? The instruments just go off the scale. And so you're seeing the visual representation of something similar to that with the Schumann frequencies. So they're, the 8 hertz is absolutely still in that white mass that you see, but it's just overloaded. It's extremely distorted.
Wow. So does it become nothing? Like nothing at all? I mean,
well, no, it's still there.
Everything, but nothing.
It's like cranked up. It's like someone just cranked the volume. And so when people are having headaches and overloads and they're having like, especially sensitive people, it just really affects the brain. So when they do this at CERN, they're just like banging, this 8 hertz frequency at us at unprecedented levels. So this has never happened before. And so the effects that you're saying when the violence goes up, this is part of it. Like the brain picks it up. You don't really hear those frequencies. 8 hertz is too low for the human ear to hear. Most people can barely hear, 20 hertz. And usually more people can hear more like 40 to 60. They start hearing around 60 hertz, like low bass frequencies that you hear if you've got a good stereo system. Usually it's about 80 hertz is where you get that really heavy thumping bass. You can pick up that cool bass sound, but anything lower than that, your ear can't really make it out. And most people's ears are so fried anyway, they can't even hear 100. So 8 hertz is way off the scale. You don't hear it, you feel it. It's resonating with your brain. So your brain is going like, freaking out.
Well, and this is how I'm going to actually connect the cryptid world to what we're talking about right now. Okay. And I have to make a connection here because there are places in the world where, I do a lot of field research, and I have friends and fellow researchers all over the world. And I have some friends in Alaska who are doing research with Sasquatch up there. And there's a place called the Alaska Triangle. And that is a place where all wildlife, including the Sasquatches, are incredibly more violent against humans. Okay, well, we have to also think about there's HARP up there. They have all these weather weapons, I guess you could call it. And they're always putting out frequencies. So you have to think that affects the animals. So that, that has to be a part of it, in my opinion. Just having all those vibes and those frequencies, right?
Well, that's exactly what's going on, Jessica. That's exactly what's going on. HARP is another one of those technologies they use to screw with the Schumann resonance. And they because they're up at those altitudes, and they're just this is all about mind control. I mean, this is the darker side of it. Okay, it's not too pleasant for people to know that this is going on. But I in the 80s, I remember I've been working with a biophysicist over here in Germany that he's into all this stuff. He's like one of these real, well, most scientists are kind of geeks, and so he's into all this data, and he's got he showed me a report. I have it in my archive of. In the early 90s, they were interviewing Michael Persinger, who we interviewed in our film Solar Revolution, to talk about these things, like the effect of the cosmic radiation on the human brain. And he was on this CNN report talking about how they've determined, that they can target every single brain on the planet. It has its own unique frequency kind of base, and they can actually target and like affect people to the point where they can even influence their thinking. They can influence what they're thinking, what they do. They can influence their states of consciousness. So this was back in the 90s. Now we're talking 30 years ago, and they've never stopped working on this technology. So you can imagine how sophisticated it's gotten since then. And HARP and CERN and the D-Wave quantum computers and others like them, they're all connected to this. They all use them interchangeably, or they connect them together to assist in their experimentation. So what's going on with Bigfoot and sis? I mean, they are probably freaking out just as much as we are, if not worse, because they're more sensitive to this, to a lot of things. Like they have other visual frequencies. They can see into other light spectrums than we can. Our visual spectrum is a very, very narrow one. And the light spectrum, if you look on a scale, is huge. Ultraviolet and extreme ultraviolet and all these different, and we only see a tiny sliver of what's really out there. If we could see more, we'd probably see all kinds of things going on around us in our reality. And I think the Sasquatch and the Yetis, and they are actually able to see larger spectrums, and they're actually able to maybe even control their own physical frequency to be able to tune in and out. Because I've heard of reports about people that they just vanish, in front of them.
Oh, yes.
So because they have, either they have the ability to mentally affect us through, we have our brains are interferometers, and they the left and right brain are harmonizing with the way they pick up scalar waves, and where those scalar waves overlap are these moments where we can either tune in or tune out things. And it's quite conceivable that Yeti and Bigfoot are using scalar technology that they have ingrained in their physical bodies to either knock us out of seeing them, or they actually physically disappear.
Yeah, you are speaking my language, Frank. You really are. I agree. Being out in the field, I've experienced I guess you could consider a cloaked Bigfoot. Okay. Things that will come up and hit my legs out from underneath me and things like that. But there's nothing there. And also I've had contact with ETs. Okay. And so I know that there's a way that they are able to control our minds. Okay. If you want to put it that way, they can do things that defy logic to us little humans. So it's with all the cryptids. Yeah.
It's not magic. It's just the fact that, there are these instruments in our body. Like, here's what it looks like. This is the human brain as an interferometer. And wherever those, on the left and right, you see these, you can basically see these pickups and receivers, and this is where they overlap, where the circle is. That's where the action is. So the Yetis have ingrained in their abilities. They're just tapping into those abilities. We have those abilities as humans. Many people that have psychic abilities, that have telekinetic abilities, those are people that are tuning into frequencies and talents and skill sets that are locked in our DNA, which most people don't access. But this is kind of when we talk about where the quantum evolutionary leap that we're expecting humanity to have is leading us. These are the kinds of qualities that we're going to be experiencing in that new world. We're going to be able to tap into those dormant, faculties that we have that are in our genetic code. We've been given this instrument, and it's like you subscribe to Sky TV and you pay the $4.99 base rate, and for that you get the 3 channels that they have, and then but there's the deluxe channel, and if you pay $50, it unlocks 180 channels, and you can get into all this other stuff. So we're about to get the deluxe version of the Sky channel, on our bodies when this upgrade happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm actually a remote viewer. And in my team of Bigfoot field researchers, we're all trained together in remote viewing. And we've been doing this for over 10 years. And so and it's like we're a little super team, the A team of, going out in the field doing paranormal research. And so, and we don't only use it for that, but we help find missing people and do cold cases and all that kind of stuff. it's my favorite hobby, as I like to say. And so, but I've been kind of tasked with teaching other people a little. I've only taught maybe one other person so far. I know, I admit it, but but I see this is where we're headed, though, and just imagine a world with more switched on psychic humans. How different this world would be, Frank. It would be amazing, but people are not aware of their abilities. Okay. And they've been under attack for so long. Just the pineal gland and the fluoride and, the sound frequencies and whatnot, and there's a couple of things that we've learned through the remote viewing training and stuff. And that is to, try to be on the highest timeline that you can be on and stay away from those low vibrational energies, even when you're remote viewing. So, you're speaking my language again, though, when it comes to where the human race is headed, hopefully. If I have anything to do with it, that's where we're headed.
Well, you have to, in order to make a timeline happen, you have to be able to visualize. You have to visualize it actively. It has to be something done actively, like because we all live on a consensus timeline. A consensus timeline is that is like, every one of us has our own timeline, so to speak. Just like we all have our own frequency. Every brain is unique. Every human being is unique. But we overlap, and that's the consensus. For otherwise, we'd never be able to interact. You and I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to each other. We've agreed on a soul level to enter this matrix 3D world. And the consensus is that we are experiencing certain events out there in the world that we can tune in and resonate with in order to interact, in order to grow and learn. And it's all about this interaction is what leads us to experiences, what leads us to emotions, is which gives us our evolutionary path. And we have the consensus version, which is the main version that we're seeing out there, the dominant version. Mm-hmm. And then we have these break-off timelines we each individually operate on. And it's science fact that the more of us that resonate on a timeline that is, that like we can imagine ourselves on a timeline, for example, that we have telepathic abilities, mm-hmm. that, that there are Sasquatch are a part of our society and they're peaceful and we live in harmony with them. And there's free energy devices, these kinds of thoughts, like we have telekinetic abilities, and we don't need to age any longer because aging is part of an antiquated reality manifestation concept that was part of the old timeline. These are the things that we can actually actively focus on and spend time in whatever way you do it. Some people meditate. And some people go, like for me, I like to go for a walk in nature and put on music sometimes. And when I do that, I visualize. I go into these trips. It's like it's whenever I want to do anything in the world. And then, like for example, that webinar that I'd created, that I've been talking about on Inspired, I didn't have that. That wasn't around, even 6 weeks ago. And it was because I visualized it, that I just said, okay, I'm going to do it. What it would look like. I've never done anything like this before. I've done films. I've done all kinds of other multimedia things. But how am I going to do this? So I would visualize it. And then when I sit down to do it, it just flows in. Yeah. And that's just part of this visual. It's just this visualization is the method that we've been given. These are the tools that we can use to generate this new timeline with. So it's all about getting into the awareness that we have this skill set and this ability, and beginning to stop our focus on the consensus timeline. Because if you agree, I think you have to think about, do you want to go on this transhumanist timeline to its full conclusion?
No.
Think it through, right? I mean, you don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be a channeler. No. You don't have to be anything. Just think it through logically. Sit down, in the day, a couple of times. Spend maybe a week or a month where you give yourself a focused time where you think about artificial intelligence to its fullest extent. Where is it going to lead us? What would it look like if we were living in a world completely run by artificial intelligence, or there are robots all around us that were looking like human beings, but they were actually not humans. They were machines.
Yeah. I think we have those already.
They acted like human in every way that you can imagine. In fact, they did a lot of things a lot better than you. Things like this, if you think them all the way through, ask yourself, is that where you want to be? Because it could mean that the version of humanity that we know right now is still a very, the organic human, as you might want to call it, mm-hmm. human 1.0.
Yes.
they may no longer be around in the next generation. It could be one
Yeah.
generation, only one generation left, right? Is that where you want to go? And if the answer is no, then think about, well, where do you want to go? And when you start thinking about where you do want to go, that's where you need to start creating pictures of what that
Yes.
world would look like. And so the more of us that do this, they don't have to all be the same pictures. Some people think, well, how are we going to manage the same? We all need to have the same picture. No, you don't. You just need to have a variation of the timeline that you're on now and your focus. And just
Yes.
think about more organic things, think about natural things, right? The natural ability to telepathically communicate rather than using a cell phone. The internet's been great as a practice run for us to imagine telepathy, because we can communicate with people across the planet instantaneously.
Right.
But you can do this without a handy or without an internet connection too.
Yeah.
The abilities are there. So you just need to start thinking about those kinds of things. And then you begin to resonate, you begin to put into resonance this new break-off timeline. And the more of us that do that, there's going to be a critical mass where, and the second aspect is we stop focusing on their time, on the transhumanist consensus timeline, and investing all of our focus on it. That means investing time in it. In terms of like watching the narrative on the fake news, which I like to call them, because
Yes.
actually what you're seeing on television is just Hollywood that's come off the big screen. It's now in the world around you. Those politicians
Exactly.
out there, they're not telling you the truth. They're just reading a script. The script is based on a narrative that some other people have written. Very powerful people, very wealthy people you will probably never encounter or hear about in your world, in your life. And those people have invested and put their front people out there, which are appearing and manifesting as news anchors, scientists, CERN, all these things. But they're only just a creation of a timeline, a consensus timeline. And we can stop thinking and resonating with it. So it begins to unravel. They begin to have problems. Their computers don't work. Their CERN experiments start to break down. Things don't work the way they expected them to. At the same time, parallel to that, our new timeline is beginning to grow and take root. This is how you can kind of imagine that happening. Because, otherwise, if we don't do that, if we don't ask these questions, and this is why the whole Guardians of the Looking Glass thing for me was like the coolest thing, because I felt it doesn't matter if it's, okay, what do you want to do now? You just want
kitty.
No, it's not the time now, okay? I'll come back to you. What was I saying? The Guardians of the Looking Glass. It was like, for me, it was like an opportunity to address the idea of timelines. And a year to the date before I discovered them, I was doing a podcast with the scientist I was mentioning earlier, Dieter Burrs. We were talking about timelines, and we were talking about all these different, what does it mean to be on a different timeline, and how does that work? And then all of a sudden, this group shows up and talks about Looking Glass. So it's an opportunity for us to use that conversation to talk about exactly what you and I are talking about right now, because that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter what they saw. Yeah, it's what they saw is only a confirmation of what's coming. But what's coming is controllable by what we create. And so that's what we need to be talking about.
Yeah. Well, the first step in all that is just knowing knowing what's going on, period. Okay. It's knowing what's going on so that you can, I want to say divert it and just change it to switch timelines. I started noticing that this world around us was getting kind of ugly. Okay. But in a sense of like the building, the architecture, the artwork, it was very rigid and like a prison. Okay. And I actually was speaking at a conference last year called Camp Disclosure. And I met a friend named Paula there who was also speaking. And she did a beautiful presentation on green cities and just making cities beautiful by putting plants and all the high rises and all this, and just making it gorgeous and beautiful. And that was when things changed for me, Frank. Like I was blown away by it because I had been conditioned to accept that our cities are ugly and they're going to be concrete buildings of blocks. And, they're just always going to be ugly and they're getting uglier. Okay. But she has a new vision, okay, of something that's just beautiful. And now I have that vision and everyone there has that vision. And that's where we're going with this now. I'm thriving to live in beauty, and that's how I want the whole world to be like that. And I think it was once upon a time.
Yes,
but yeah. but
You're right.
it
I
got
totally
ugly.
agree. It's just it's disgusting what's happened. I mean, the whole modern art thing. There's a museum in Salzburg about 30 minutes from here, the Modern Museum of Art, and it's
Oh
just
yeah.
some gross looking concrete square block, and it's sitting
Right.
beside some medieval architecture. And
Yeah,
it's
it
like
doesn't make
people have become
sense.
conditioned to think that minimalism and this meaning, absolutely nothingness is cool.
Right.
But ask yourself, do the politicians out there that you see on television, where do they meet? Ever notice that they meet in these buildings that look like incredible marvels from the Middle Ages that are,
Oh yeah.
architecture with huge domes and beautiful tinted glass and art and sculptures everywhere? And it just, why they meet there? Because it reminds them of the glory and the power that we have, except they're
Yes.
the ones that are in that ambient. We're the
Not for
ones that are
thee.
told, wear your ripped up jeans so you look like a farmer.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with farmers. I love farmers, but
Yes.
they're work pants, right? And so it's like
Or your
we've been
underwear hanging out of your
conditioned.
pants.
We've
Right.
been devolved, we've been
Yes.
deliberately devolved into accepting, and the thing is, even, I mean, well, I won't go into that topic because that's kind of a dangerous topic about Germany and the Second World War and who was running it,
Yes.
what they were planning. But there were
Yeah.
architects involved over here that were making plans because that was happening 100 years ago already here. And there are people that were trying to create this new Germany were thinking they had plans for these amazing architecture and buildings everywhere, because they knew that puts the consciousness of the people into a higher state, a higher frequency. You just feel automatically more regal and more, you
Yes.
just feel more evolved just simply by looking at these. You've probably all heard of the Max Eigen mud flood videos out there, and if you look at them, they talk about the
The mud
buildings that were
flood. Yes.
found, cities that were pretty much there. There's these amazing pictures of huge cities, St. Petersburg and things like that are vacant, like there's nobody there, sitting there in the middle of the day, nobody on the streets, right? How does
Uh-huh.
that work? Yet the buildings were like these immaculate, amazing looking buildings. Well, who built them? Where'd they come from, right? So
Yeah.
this is where we once were, and we can't let ourselves be fooled that these gray minimalist modern art, like, what? That's not the art I think is modern, right?
Oh,
So
it's
what
not.
we've
It's
been
not our
talking about is
reality,
art.
though. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be the art that you like, because we shape our own realities, and so we can create a whole new world for ourselves. I mean, we just have to do it, right?
Yes, we do. We have to do it. And I love what you're telling about, the visualizing of the gardens and stuff. This is all what I'm talking. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Just
Hmm.
this idea of visualizing things. You start focusing on them and you manifest them. And we have the Higgs
Yes.
bosons to help us.
Well, we have to use that to our advantage, Frank. And
Yes.
so instead of the doom and gloom, what can we do to use this for our benefit?
Well, the one you mentioned it earlier. On the one hand, you need to look at the evil in the eye, so to speak.
Hmm.
So you're aware of what's going on. You need to
Yes.
break down the environment around you. You need to recognize it first. You need to
Yes.
recognize, just like an alcoholic needs to recognize they have a problem. In society, we need to recognize that we have a problem, we have a problem with the way society is running, with the way we are allowing ourselves to be led around by the nose, having our rights, our Bill of Rights eroded, having constitutionally guaranteed rights taken away without question, having our human inviolable rights just, simply stripped away by a group of people who are, who have condensed our window of perception according to how they want us to see their world. We
Hmm.
need to recognize that problem is going on. And that's the only reason to focus on anything negative, is simply to see that, hey, it's going on. Wake up.
Hmm.
The emperor is not wearing no clothes, people. He's naked.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know you think he's wearing a
Butt
gold
naked.
garb and everything is looking amazing, but no, he's not. There's nothing on him. He's naked. So
Yeah.
see it. See the emperor, right? First. And then once you
Yes.
see it, don't labor on it. Because one of the things that, I started to wake up when I was early, like a boy, still 12, 13, 14 years old. And it was I think for me, it was very depressing, And it's funny
It
because,
is depressing. It's
I
depressing at
look
an
at
older
pictures of
age.
myself,
Okay.
and I always had this frown on my face, and
Oh,
because I think it was because I was picking up on the heaviness of what I was moving into, that I'd created, incarnated into. And
yeah.
but we don't need to labor. You don't need to belabor the negativity. You don't need to stay there. But it's only about recognizing it. And then the other aspect of it is to just focus on something positive. Do something positive. Use your inherent abilities as a creator being to create something. And that takes you away from the negativity. And that's the most positive thing that we can do.
And turn off the TV.
Turn off the TV, turn off the internet, turn off your phone,
Yeah.
go for a walk in the woods.
And I think a lot of us have done that, but that's where the timeline splits, right, Frank? It's kind of like, well, there's those of us that have done that and we are doing that. And then there's other people who are still choosing to live in fear on that other timeline.
Yes.
And it's kind of sad.
Yeah. But, ask yourself maybe this, like, do those people really exist?
That's a good question.
I
Ooh, that
have a
just made me
friend of mine,
sweaty when you said
unfortunately,
that.
passed away like a couple of months ago,
Oh my
but
gosh.
he and I used to do presentations together, and he was a dowser, and he had this theory that there really are only 7% of the people out there that you see are real humans. And the rest of them are just they're either clones or they're like soulless beings, right? Or they're maybe even extraterrestrial beings that are cloaked as human beings. So the real
reptilians
human beings
actually
are actually only a small minority of those that we see that may be out there. I'm just positing this for you out there, but think about it. I mean, really, maybe all those people that will just disappear. The illusion will disappear.
Wow. NPCs. YJ Overlander. Yeah, that is 100%. That's a great point, Frank. I have not looked at that way before, but maybe they're not existing, and which is interesting because I do a lot of remote viewing, and in some of my data, it's some things like that have been coming up lately. A lot of shape shifting. I remote view paranormal things, okay, and like paranormal attacks. And I have a show that I do Friday nights where I remote view, Bigfoot attacks or alleged dogman attacks. And a couple of weeks ago, it's for fun, but I get some pretty good data. And a couple of weeks ago, I remote viewed the lizard man in South Carolina, and an incident that happened to a young 16-year-old out there. And it turns out this lizard that people had been seeing was a reptilian shapeshifter. Okay. And it disappeared. And we were kind of making jokes like, well, maybe it's the sheriff now, because it sounds, we were laughing about it, but you don't know. We live in a very strange world.
They Live, right? And that film, where the guy with the glasses, and there may be some truth to that. Like a lot of stuff is leaked out to us as soft disclosure on the silver screen and on television.
Everything.
A lot of messages are being put out there. It's like, really, if you stop thinking in terms of everything is outside of yourself and there's you.
Yes.
And think more in terms.
All right. Is that mine or is that Frank's? Let's see. Hello. All right. I can't tell if that's my connection or Frank's. Can somebody in chat let me know? Okay. He stopped. Okay, so I'm still here. All right, everybody. Maybe he will. Frank, if you can hear us, Frank, if you can hear us, just log out and then log back in. We've only got about 10 more minutes tonight. So, yeah. Let's see. Maybe his internet connection will come back. All right, he just logged out, so he's going to come back. And so I got to finish this talk. This is really cool, and I've never even thought about, all the soulless beings that we could have walking around. And when it comes to cryptids, like the lizard man that I remote viewed in South Carolina, it was a reptilian, and I don't know a whole lot about reptilians, but this thing was a shapeshifter, and so we just don't know who is coming in and out of our reality. It's like I said, it's a really crazy world that we live in. So I don't know. But yeah, everybody, I think we've got Frank coming back in. So yeah, we're going to finish up our conversation. Hi, Frank. You're back.
That was wild.
No, I thought, it's usually mine that freezes. So I was sitting there asking the chat, is that me or him? Can somebody tell me?
Yeah, I just
It
my
froze.
whole system just went blacked out.
Well, it's only 4 something in the morning there. So maybe it's because it's so
Very
early.
weird. Yeah, well, yeah, crazy. Anyway,
Well,
what I was talking
we're
about
having wonderful conversation here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I was getting at was that if we stop thinking ourselves as an individual within our skins, and that the world is out there externally and we're internally here, and start thinking more in terms of, everything is one. If we really do want to, if we talk about the idea that everything is one, well, when are we going to start practicing it? If we see it that way, then we have to look at all those things out there, even the dark things, as part of, if we're living in this envelope, this bubble of reality. We can't pretend that just on the other end, those bad guys there, they're not us, but this is us, and start thinking in terms of, hey, that's actually part of us. So, and we're very amazing, powerful beings. Like, we have been told that we're these little dwarves, but in fact, we could be these giant, incredibly powerful, psychically powerful beings out there in the world that are actually manifesting our own, reality bubble. And in that reality bubble, we're creative and complex enough that we actually manifest Hollywood and television and Netflix and even shows that are there for us, that one day we discover that are giving us a direct message about the way reality works. And that, if we're driving in a car and we just have a thought, and we're going, man, this is going to be hard. How am I going to do this? I need to get this thing done. And then we turn around the corner and the car in front of us has a license plate that says easy.
Slow down.
Right. It's like, these are the ways, the ways the universe communicates with us and the way that we manifest. So if we start thinking in terms of that's not accidental, like the way the scientists, the Klaus Schwab gang thinks that everything's an accident, and start thinking in terms of everything is divine, then that license plate becomes a direct message to us. That's our informational data bank that our creative greater self, our higher selves manifest on us. So we can choose, are we going to look at that as a message from the universe, or are we going to say, oh, that's an interesting coincidence, but it isn't real, right? So we don't get the, and what do we have to gain by looking at it that way? If we just look at it objectively, like it's just data, but it has no significance, then we lose out on the ability to take that information and go, wait a minute, that's a message speaking to me. What other messages are speaking to me? You come home and a friend leaves you a message about this new cool show that you have to check out, and you watch the first episode, and there's one of the characters says a line that totally resonates with something you were just processing back there when you were driving in the car. That's, if you start thinking about the universe as this living, dynamic, active extension of yourself and not something externally outside of yourself, your perception changes completely.
Yeah, I think that's where it all changed with me, actually, was when I started paying attention to the signs and synchronicities and being grateful for everything that was put on my path, the good and the bad, and taking everything as a learning experience. And trust me, I've been through some bad stuff, okay? But, I still have a smile on my face. I'm still happy. And I'm sitting here talking to Frank Jacob tonight. So I'm doing pretty well, okay? Yeah. So it's all about looking at life differently and taking things in from a different perspective, and really going to your highest timeline. Okay. And because you really, like you mentioned, a tuning fork earlier tonight. We are each tuning forks. We're like a ripple in the water, and our energy affects everyone around us. And so if we can just keep our energy good, get to a good place, and vibe high, get that high vibe tribe going, okay, you start attracting your tribe. And so that's how we're going to elevate as a human race. And something that I like to talk about just about on all my shows is I bring in some point about what it means to be human. Okay. And I'm kind of going around the subject by, talking about cryptids and the cryptid world and ETs. And I relate that to what it means to be human. And, and this transhumanist movement is very scary for me. And so anything we can do to combat losing humanity, I'm for it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what you're doing when you remote view is just you're accessing those faculties, that you're actually making that connection, that you're really just seeing another part of yourself.
Yes.
So the people that are
That's right.
clear, the best remote viewers are the ones who are, able to tune into that realization the strongest. And
Yeah.
so you're not actually looking at something remotely.
Mm-hmm. That's
You're
right.
looking at something directly within you.
Yes, that's right. That is absolutely right. And I've come to the realization as well is that I'm really just kind of a channel for the divine, for whatever. I'm a channel, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't claim to know what I'm talking about. But I relay the messages and the things that I see and the things that I say, and I have people that might know a little bit more about it come in and help me decipher what I've the message and what I saw. And that's really fun for me. I really appreciate the people I have in my life, and the people that are here to help each other, on this crazy journey, Frank, because it is a crazy journey. So
Yes, it is.
yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, there's so many things I was going to bring up tonight. We've got about 5 more minutes. Unfortunately, I could talk to you for hours, I'm sure. But we're talking about. I was going to talk to you about time travel tonight, but I'm not sure if we have time.
Yeah, in 5 minutes, it's a little tough
Yeah,
order.
it
Well, what do you want
is.
to know? What can we talk in 5 minutes about time travel?
Well, what
I
is the
can
difference
talk
between
fast.
we got time travel and then we have timeline shifts? Okay, there's all this time stuff, and it could get a little confusing, especially to people who don't know a whole lot about it or haven't studied it. Are people that are time traveling just I don't know. Let's talk about Project Looking Glass real quick. How about that? Because we haven't really touched on that much. And I'll tell you, the first time I ever heard of Project Looking Glass was I was reading an article, and it was about the Trump family, President Trump, and his family being time travelers. Okay,
Yeah.
potentially. Now, have you heard that? And I mean, because that's how I got introduced to Project Looking Glass.
Well, I have. There's a series of books that people have probably heard about that, have this Baron, von Trump or
Yes.
something, and it's very uncanny because of the sync points between those stories, which go back, 100 years, and what's going on now with the Trump family. But also with the Simpsons,
Oh
there's these weird
yeah.
overlaps, and I think what we're talking about, what we're dealing with here, are really like time travelers that are people have to, time travel doesn't necessarily have to happen in a device. And the looking glass works because not because of its, the way they screwed the machine together and built it. And it works because of where they place it. One of the big
Ah.
formulas is that they have to actually put the device near what's called a Stargate. Now, what is a Stargate? Well, Stargates are naturally occurring vortex points all around the planet. Some people think that, Sedona, Arizona is one of those places where there's a lot of vortex points, for example. And I've lived there, and I
Okay.
know there really are. But that's why you have a lot
Yeah.
of Sasquatch activity and a lot of unusual portals opening and things that are seen there. It's because that's an area that's rich in these Stargates. And the Stargates are really just, connect points. If you have a vortex, basically you have 2 points that meet, and what's on the other side of the veil, where they meet. We have this side, we have the vortex, and we have the other side. And the qualities of these stargates are that it helps us to transcend distance and time. So, because time is really just, an illusion in a way, we can actually, teleport into other times. And so I believe what we've seen with these Simpsons episodes and with this Trump thing is cases where people may have actually entered one of these portals, traveled back, and implanted things in the
Yeah.
past. Because that's how the looking glass people work. They work by looking at timelines. When they set this
Yeah.
device up at one of these stargates, it starts to generate a field, and the field shows images of future timelines. And they filmed them, and they cataloged them, and they hooked them up to computers, and they could, keyword them, and they could tell once they'd set up a cycle. The way it worked is that the thing played a loop of 7 days, 144 times, worked out to 2.76 years, where they would see one
Interesting.
particular timeline. And so they could figure out, okay, now that we know that timeline began again, and it's going to start all over again, well, what happens if we do this? and then they can see what the result would be. So I think with these Trump,
Oh,
Barron, Trump and Simpsons things is a case where somebody actually went back to a time point, dropped a little nugget, something insignificant in a way, like a little book or something,
but significant, right?
and then step back into the now, and guess what? That has evolved and turned into
Yes,
something which appeared magically, and also this ties into the Mandela effect, but that's another
it
topic.
does.
But that's kind of how the looking glass would work. They
Yeah,
would actually manipulate the timeline to see what had changed, and eventually
yeah.
they figured out that they didn't have to do anything else because it seems to always be going in their favor, because they would
Mhm.
want things to happen a certain way. And that's that's what was said was one of the reasons why they shut it down, because they didn't want to. They were happy with the result, and
Yeah,
we now have the chance. Of course, there's these 3 intersecting years: 2012, 2016, and 22, where there was a break-off timeline, and that would lead to the timeline that we would consider the ultimate organic timeline that we keep talking about wanting to manifest. And so
yeah,
this is why the Guardians of the Looking Glass appeared in 2022 with these cryptic messages, because they wanted to implant and seed reality that we know, our perception, with these ideas, so that we begin to actually create that, because the officials were not announcing that hey,
yeah.
we need to start this new timeline, we need to get things on track. No, they were happy. They've got their transhumanist world going. They've got their D-Wave, their quantum computers set up.
Yeah,
They've got their little control grid. They've got their underground cities. If everything goes to hell in a handbasket here on the surface, well, what do they care, right? They don't care
exactly.
if 90% of the population vanishes or
But
disappears or dies off.
we'll see, but we do care. And I wish we had more time to talk about this, Frank. So your Tell of Two Timelines webinar discusses all of this. It's amazing. I haven't been able to get there yet, but I'm going to. Absolutely. I absolutely will check it out. I want everybody watching tonight to please go sign up for his webinar. Okay. And Frank, where can people find you? You have a website, right?
frankjacob.com.
Okay, awesome. All your information's there. Frank, thank you so much for being my guest tonight. This has been amazing. I hope that you'll come back and join me again. We'll talk more about timelines. Okay. And CERN. Listen, hold tight, buckle your seatbelt, everybody. We've got CERN turning on in a couple of days. So, Frank, I hope it doesn't suck us into a black hole. Okay.
It won't.
It won't. It won't. We're going to go for our highest timeline. All right, Frank. Listen, you have a wonderful night, and we will see you next time. All right. Thank you. All right. Bye, Frank. You guys, that was amazing. Don't forget that right after the show, you can join the live crew on After Hours. They're going to take you on an incredible journey for the next 3 hours. Tomorrow night on Off the Trails, my guest is cryptozoologist and author Ryan Edwards. We'll be talking about the origins of Sasquatch. I can't wait to see y'all there. But for now, I am headed off the trails. I'm the Cryptid Huntress, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a good night.